Two men desire a crown. One is virtuous, patient, and deserving. The other is merely bold. By sunrise, one will be a king, and the other will be a memory. The world is not a morality play, it is a contest of wills. And in this contest, there is only one unforgivable sin: hesitation. You have been taught a lie. It is a beautiful, seductive lie, woven into the very fabric of our culture, whispered by mentors and glorified in fables. It is the lie that patience is a supreme virtue, that careful deliberation is the mark of genius, that if you are righteous, diligent, and wait for the opportune moment, the world will eventually recognize your worth and deliver your just reward. This doctrine is not wisdom, it is a sedative. It is a lullaby sung to pacify the ambitious and to keep the existing order undisturbed. It is the moral justification for inaction, a noble-sounding excuse for fear. In the unforgiving calculus of power, this belief is not a shield, it is a cage of your own design, a prison of prudence, where your own intellect serves as both the inmate and the jailer. Consider the cautious man, the paragon of this flawed virtue. He is a master of analysis, a grandmaster of the hypothetical. His mind is a fortress built to defend against the chaos of the unknown. He spends his days mapping every potential pitfall, charting every variable, running endless simulations of failure. He is waiting for the perfect moment to act, a flawless celestial alignment where success is not merely probable, but an immutable certainty. He mistakes this paralysis for strategy. He believes he is outwitting fate. In truth, he is merely surrendering his own agency to it. For this perfect moment he so desperately awaits is a phantom. It will never arrive. The battlefield of life does not pause for one man's endless calculations. While he hesitates, the world moves on, relentless and indifferent. The political landscape shifts like desert sands. His rivals, unburdened by his crippling need for guarantees, make their moves. They act on incomplete information, they take calculated risks, they seize the fleeting opportunities that he is still debating. Time, which he saw as a fertile ground for his plans to ripen, is actually a corrosive acid, eating away at his position, his resources, and his relevance. Every day he spends in deliberation is a gift to his enemies, a day for them to forge alliances, to sharpen their blades, to consolidate their power. He is a ship captain who fears the storm so much that he refuses to leave the harbor, not realizing his ship is slowly rotting at the dock. His prudence does not save him from the storm. It guarantees he will never reach a new shore. His prison is built from the finest materials: reason, morality, and an intellectual arrogance that confuses thought with action. He looks out upon the world of deeds and sees only recklessness, blind to the slow, creeping decay of his own potential within the sterile safety of his mind. He fails to grasp the most fundamental law of power. Inaction is itself a decisive action. It is a conscious choice to cede the initiative. It is a vote for the status quo even as the ground cracks beneath his feet. It is a silent invitation for others to write his destiny for him. And when the end comes, when he is swept aside by men of lesser intellect but greater will, he will not be remembered as wise. He will be a forgotten footnote in the biography of the man who acted. Against this self-inflicted ruin, there is an antidote. A philosophy forged not in the tranquility of a library, but in the brutal high-stakes arena of statecraft and exile. It is the stark realism of Niccolo Machiavelli. He offers you no comforting falsehoods, no moral platitudes. He offers you a key, a weapon, to shatter the prison of your own making. He begins not by judging you, but by holding up a mirror to your most basic nature. He writes that the desire to acquire is in truth a very natural and common thing. He does not condemn this hunger for power, for influence, for legacy. He recognizes it as the very engine of history. Ambition is not a flaw to be suppressed. It is a vital sign and biological imperative for anyone who refuses to be erased by time. To deny this impulse, to cloak it in the virtuous robes of patience and contentment, is to wage a futile war against the core of your being. From this unflinching observation comes the prince's great mandate, the mandate to acquire, the mandate to act. For Machiavelli, a leader who does not actively seek to expand his dominion to secure his state and to impose his will upon circumstance is not a leader at all. He is merely a custodian of power, a temporary placeholder who will inevitably be displaced by someone with a greater appetite. Inaction is not prudence, it is abdication. It is a dereliction of the fundamental duty of a ruler, which is to bend reality to his vision, not to be broken by it. Every moment of hesitation is a profound betrayal of your own ambition, a betrayal of your potential, and a betrayal of those who depend on your strength to shield them from chaos. Your caution creates a vacuum, and power, like nature itself, abhors a vacuum. It will be filled by your rivals, by anarchy, by the merciless river of fortune that drowns all who stand still. The world, in the Machiavellian view, is not a finished work of art to be passively admired. It is a raw, unforgiving block of marble, and you are the sculptor. Action is your chisel. Every bold decision, every decisive strike, every calculated risk is a blow that carves your will into the stone of reality. The patient man waits for the marble to reveal its hidden form. The prince, through force and audacity, commands the marble to accept the form he has chosen for it. This is the great liberation that Machiavelli offers. He frees you from the psychological chains of waiting for permission, waiting for certainty, waiting for fate to smile upon you. He teaches that fortune is a woman who is more often won by the impetuous than by those who proceed coldly. She favors the young, the aggressive, the bold, those who are not afraid to force the issue. This is the prince's prerogative. Comment "Action is sovereign" to declare your allegiance to this truth, and subscribe for the next lessons on the architecture of audacity. You have affirmed that action is sovereign. In doing so, you have taken the first step out of the prison of prudence and into the open field of conflict and opportunity. But a declaration of intent is not a strategy. The will to act, without the knowledge of how and when, is mere recklessness, a moth drawn to a flame. Now you must learn the engineering of effectiveness, the cold science behind the art of the decisive move. This is the architecture of audacity, a blueprint not for random acts of courage, but for the calculated application of force that bends the world to your design. It is built upon three foundational pillars, principles that separate the successful ruler from the glorious failure. The first pillar is the mastery of occasion, opportunity. The passive man confuses this with luck. He waits for what he calls fortune, a benevolent goddess he hopes will one day smile upon him. The strategist knows better. Fortune is not a goddess, it is a raging river, a chaotic force that creates currents and eddies, floods and droughts. The strategist does not wait for this river to carry him to his destination. Instead, he scrutinizes its every surge and tremor, looking for something far more valuable, far more fleeting, occasione. Opportunity is a transient vulnerability in the fabric of reality. It is a momentary weakness in your rival's defense, a sudden schism in public opinion, a crisis that paralyzes everyone else with fear. The idealist sees a tragedy, the strategist sees a doorway. Machiavelli illustrates this with the greatest of founders. Moses would never have been able to demonstrate his virtue, his skill, his spirit, his leadership, had the people of Israel not been enslaved and oppressed in Egypt. Their suffering was the occasion. Their desperation was the raw material from which he forged a nation. Opportunity, you see, rarely arrives dressed in the finery of good news. More often, it wears the mask of a dire problem. It is the competence to exploit a crisis that defines a true leader. The man of action does not simply wait for these moments, he hunts them. He develops an instinct for them. He understands that occasion is perishable. It has a lifespan often measured in hours or minutes. The moment you recognize it is the moment you must act, for the window of advantage closes as quickly as it opens. To hesitate, to subject a fleeting opportunity to a committee of doubts, is to ensure its demise. This is why the cautious man consistently fails. He sees the opportunity, but he also sees the risks. He wants to be certain of the outcome. But certainty is the luxury of historians, not of actors on the world stage. The audacious ruler understands that in the critical moment, the risk of inaction is infinitely greater than the risk of a flawed action. An imperfect strike that lands is superior to a perfect plan that never launches. You must train your mind to see the world not as a static board, but as a fluid, dynamic conflict. And in that conflict, you must be the predator who recognizes the flicker of weakness, the scent of fear, and strikes without a second thought. The second pillar in our architecture is the rejection of the fallacy of deferment. This is Machiavelli's most devastating critique of patience. The cautious man believes that by postponing a difficult decision, he is avoiding a conflict. He tells himself he is buying time, allowing the situation to clarify. This is a catastrophic miscalculation. Machiavelli is explicit. One should never permit a disorder to persist in order to avoid a war, for war is not avoided thereby, but is merely deferred to one's own disadvantage. A problem, left to fester, does not solve itself. It metastasizes, it grows stronger, sinks deeper roots, and gathers allies. That small dissent within your ranks, which could have been silenced with a single decisive action, becomes a full-blown conspiracy. That minor financial discrepancy, if ignored, becomes an institutional crisis that bankrupts your enterprise. Your rival's initial, probing insult, if you meet it with patient silence, will be seen as weakness, inviting a more significant and humiliating assault. Audacity in this context is not about aggression for its own sake. It is about brutal, preventative realism. It is the wisdom of the surgeon who knows that a small, clean incision today will prevent a fatal gangrene tomorrow. The act is painful. It may be unpopular, but it is necessary. It preserves the health of the whole. Deferment, on the other hand, is cowardice masquerading as prudence. It is the hope that a monster, if ignored, will simply go away. But monsters do not go away. They feed on your inaction. By refusing to confront a growing threat, you are not keeping the peace. You are merely guaranteeing that when the conflict finally becomes unavoidable, you will be in a much weaker position. Your enemy will be more prepared, the problem will be more complex, and your own resources will be depleted by the long period of uncertainty. You must wage war on your own tendency to procrastinate. You must cultivate the courage to face unpleasant realities the moment they appear. The truly bold move is often not the grand public charge, but the quiet, unseen decision to solve a problem at its inception, before the world even knows it exists. The third and final pillar is the most creative, the establishment of new arms and new laws. Audacity is not merely a tool for destruction or for seizing power. Its ultimate purpose is to create a new and lasting order. This is where the visionary separates himself from the mere warlord. A prince who takes over a new state and attempts to rule it with the old structures, the old loyalties, and the old customs is a fool. He is building his magnificent new house upon the rotten foundations of his predecessor. The very systems that allowed the old ruler to fall are, by definition, flawed and unreliable. To govern with them is to invite the same fate upon yourself. The man of action understands that the seizure of power is not the end of the campaign, it is the beginning. He must have the audacity to conduct a fundamental reset. This means creating a new military, loyal only to him, his new arms. It means imposing a new legal framework, a new constitution that reflects his authority and his vision, his new laws. This is perhaps the most terrifying act of audacity. It requires you to dismantle institutions that people may consider sacred. It means dismissing men who were powerful just yesterday. It means rendering old traditions obsolete overnight. Such actions will inevitably create resentment and make you enemies. The hesitant man would shrink from this. He would attempt a compromise, blending the old with the new in an effort to appease everyone. Machiavelli warns that this is the surest path to ruin. It creates a hybrid state, crippled by internal contradictions and divided loyalties. It pleases no one and is despised by all. The truly audacious founder has the courage to be a destroyer first, so that he may be a creator second. He understands that to build something that lasts, he cannot simply occupy the existing throne. He must shatter it and forge a new one from the pieces, a throne built to his own specifications, resting upon a foundation of his own making. This is the ultimate expression of power, not just to win the game, but to have the daring to rewrite its rules entirely. You have now been given the blueprints for decisive action, the principles of recognizing opportunity, confronting problems at their inception, and the necessity of forging a new order. But these architectural plans are worthless if the builder's hand trembles. An army of lions led by a sheep is destined for slaughter. The most formidable fortress you must conquer is not an enemy stronghold, but the labyrinth of your own mind. Before you can command the world, you must achieve absolute dominion over yourself. This is the third stage of your education, an exploration of the psychology of the predator and a dissection of the herd-like nature of the prey you intend to lead. The first and most grueling campaign is waged internally in the silent theater of your thoughts. Here you must confront and strangle your own indecision. Hesitation is not a character flaw, it is a psychological poison. It stems from a deep-seated desire to be liked, to be seen as good, to avoid criticism, and above all, from the paralyzing fear of being wrong. The common man is enslaved by these impulses. His actions are dictated by a desperate need for social approval. He seeks consensus before he moves, believing there is safety in numbers. The prince must understand that this is the mentality of prey. The herd moves together for warmth and for the illusion of security, unaware that their predictability makes them easy targets for the wolf. You must surgically remove this need for approval from your psyche. Your decisions cannot be subject to a popular vote. The path to greatness is invariably a lonely one, and the sounds you will hear most often are not cheers of adulation, but the whispers of envy and the howls of condemnation from those you have surpassed. To achieve this internal dominion, you must cultivate a state of calculated detachment. You must learn to view the chessboard of power with the cold, dispassionate eyes of a grandmaster. Your emotions, your anger, your pity, your affections are liabilities. They are strings by which lesser men can manipulate you. This does not mean you become a heartless monster. It means your heart cannot be allowed to veto the commands of your strategic mind. Machiavelli advises that the prince must learn how not to be good, and to use this knowledge or not according to necessity. This is the crux of the matter. You are not abandoning morality. You are transcending the conventional, simplistic morality of the masses to embrace a higher, more demanding code, the ethic of effectiveness. Your primary moral duty is not to be liked, but to be effective. Your responsibility is to the stability of the state, the success of the enterprise, the preservation of the power that allows you to impose order on chaos. If achieving that requires an action that the common man would deem cruel or unjust, then so be it. The judgment of history will absolve you. For history is not written by the well-intentioned, but by the victorious. This internal war is won when the fear of failure is replaced by a profound contempt for inaction. You must come to see indecision not as caution, but as a form of desertion in the face of battle. Once you have mastered the terrain of your own mind, you can begin to shape the perceptions of others. Power is not merely the ability to compel action, it is the ability to define reality for those you lead. This is the public projection of your will, the grand spectacle of momentum. The masses are not governed by logic, they are governed by emotion and appearance. They do not analyze your policies in detail, they respond to the aura of strength you project. A leader who acts with speed and unwavering resolve, even if he makes mistakes, creates an impression of unstoppable force. He generates momentum. This momentum is a psychological weapon of immense power. It inspires your allies who feel they are on the side of destiny. It demoralizes your adversaries who begin to see resistance as futile. They cannot predict your next move because you are always in motion, always on the offensive, always dictating the tempo of the conflict. You force them into a reactive posture, perpetually off balance, responding to threats you created yesterday while you are already planning the victories of tomorrow. Contrast this with the leader who is patient, who deliberates endlessly, who consults everyone before making a move. He projects stagnation. His caution is not perceived as wisdom, but as weakness and fear. His allies become anxious and begin to hedge their bets. His enemies are emboldened, seeing an opportunity to probe his defenses and challenge his authority. In the theater of power, perception is reality. You must therefore become the conscious architect of your own image. Every public act should be a calculated performance designed to reinforce the narrative of your inevitable success. This is Machiavelli's famous counsel on appearances, that a prince should strive to appear merciful, faithful, humane, sincere, and religious. The key word is appear. You must be the master of this facade while retaining the mental flexibility to act contrary to these virtues whenever necessity demands it. The public consumes the image, not the complex reality. By projecting an aura of relentless forward motion, you do more than just achieve objectives. You create a cult of personality around your own decisiveness. People will follow you not just because they agree with you, but because they believe in your capacity to win. This is the essence of leadership, to embody the very momentum you wish to create in the world, compelling others to join your march lest they be left behind or crushed beneath its weight. You have navigated the treacherous labyrinth of your own mind and mastered the art of public perception. You have learned to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. Now, before we unveil the final mechanics of consolidating your power, ensure you are subscribed. For the ultimate wisdom is reserved not for the merely curious, but for those committed to the path, those ready to translate knowledge into legacy. You stand now at the precipice of the final act, the decisive stroke. This is the moment where theory becomes reality, where all your preparation, psychological conditioning, and strategic planning converge into a single transformative event. This is not mere action. It is the physical manifestation of your will, a calculated detonation designed to shatter the existing order and clear the ground for the new one you intend to build. Machiavelli understood that the nature of this strike is as important as its timing. For injuries, he counseled, should be done all at one time so that being tasted less, they offend less. Benefits should be handed out one by one so that they may be tasted better. This insight is the key to the master stroke. It must be a display of overwhelming and shocking force, a political, economic, or social blitzkrieg that is so swift and so total that it leaves your adversaries mentally and physically disarmed. The man of caution would approach this moment incrementally. He would attempt to remove his rivals one by one, to introduce his radical changes slowly, hoping to minimize resistance. This is a fatal error. A series of small hesitant actions does not pacify your opponents. It educates them. The first blow alerts them to your intentions. The second teaches them your methods. By the third, they have organized a coalition to destroy you. Prolonged piecemeal aggression creates a lingering atmosphere of fear and uncertainty, which breeds resentment and conspiracies. It gives those who would oppose you the most precious of all commodities, time. The decisive stroke, however, operates on the principle of psychological shock. Its sheer audacity and velocity are designed to induce a state of paralysis. The goal is to fundamentally alter the strategic landscape in a single afternoon, to create a new reality so suddenly that your enemies find themselves checkmated before they even realize the game had reached its climax. Think of Cesare Borgia at Sinigaglia, inviting his treacherous captains to a feast of reconciliation, only to have them all strangled in a single night. It was an act of supreme cruelty, yes, but it was also an act of supreme efficiency. It eliminated all major threats to his rule in one fell swoop, preventing months, perhaps years, of costly civil war. The shock of the event cemented his reputation and ensured that no one would dare to conspire against him in the same way again. This act is the ultimate test of your virtù, your capacity to seize a fleeting window of occasion presented by fortune. It is not about reckless gambling. It is a calculated assault when the enemy's guard is down, when circumstances are aligned, when a single well-placed blow can bring the entire edifice of the old order crashing down. The execution must be flawless, the planning secret, and the aftermath managed with an iron hand. The aim is not to inflict pain, but to achieve a swift and irreversible conclusion, to lance the boil of opposition so that the body politic may heal and stabilize under your command. It is a terrible necessity, a baptism of fire from which your new state is born. But the masterstroke, for all its pyrotechnics, is not the end. It is merely the beginning. The true measure of a prince is not in his ability to seize power, but in his capacity to hold it. The aftermath of your decisive action is a moment of maximum vulnerability. The old order lies in ruins, but the new one is not yet built. This is the moment when the visionary must immediately become the architect. To pause, to celebrate your victory, to rest upon your laurels, is to invite chaos to reclaim the ground you have just won. Your audacity must now pivot from destruction to creation. You must immediately begin to forge the institutions that will secure your legacy. This is the consolidation, the methodical process of transforming your personal power into a durable, impersonal state. This means establishing your new arms and new laws with that same relentless momentum. You must create a new bureaucracy, staffed with men whose loyalty is to you and the new system, not to the ghosts of the old regime. You must promulgate a new legal code that legitimizes your authority and enshrines your vision. You must establish new economic realities that reward your allies and disempower your former enemies. Every action in this phase must be designed to make the new status quo seem natural, inevitable, and permanent. You are not merely occupying a position of power. You are building the very scaffolding of the state, a structure that can stand long after you are gone. This is the difference between a tyrant and a founder. A tyrant's power is personal and dies with him. A founder builds institutions that outlive him, embedding his will into the very DNA of the nation. This process is less dramatic than the initial seizure of power, but it is infinitely more important. It is the hard, unglamorous work of statecraft, the forging of a destiny, not the acceptance of one. Herein lies the ultimate philosophical conclusion. The world is not a stage for the drama of good versus evil. That is a comforting fiction for the powerless. The world is a canvas, and the forces of history are a chaotic storm of fortune and human ambition. Most people are content to be leaves tossed about in this storm, but the prince, the true man of action, refuses this fate. He builds a seawall of virtue against the raging river of fortune. He understands that power is not a possession, it is a creative force. It is the ability to impose order on chaos, to provide security in a world of uncertainty, to build something that lasts in the face of entropy. The ultimate justification for the hard, often brutal necessities of his actions is not personal gain, but the creation and preservation of a stable state, a legacy that provides a measure of peace and prosperity for the many. Destiny is not something you await patiently. It is a fortress, and it must be built, stone by bloody stone, with the unwavering audacity of a hand that refuses to tremble.